Hello, beautiful brave warrior soul friends. Part of the dissociative identity movement, which will be launching in a few months, so wild, is explaining Janina Fisher's multi-conscious parts approach, what it is and um, why it can be more effective than other therapy models. I believe it is superior, but I totally reserve, leave space for everyone's opinions. Everyone's healing journey is different, and it's not a one size fits all one thing. And this is a very new approach, and finding a therapist who knows how to use it or even knows that it exists is very, very challenging. So I encourage everyone to introduce their therapists, past or present, to Janina Fisher's multi-conscious parts approach, talked about in her 2017 book, Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors, Overcoming Internal Self-Alienation. I got a copy right here to show you. So I did this too. I went back to all my previous therapists that I still had contact information for, and so will you please read this book? And I'm hoping that if they have a client like me in the future, the treatment will go a lot better than it did with me. The main reason that this model is superior is because it never requires people to explore their traumas in detail. It never requires a narrative of the trauma that have happened. It never requires diving into the specific individual traumas and exploring the details at all. Not even once. Not a part of the therapy at all. And yet it still involves getting to know individual parts. It still involves extensive compassion and internal communication. And it still leads to integration. So it's a much less painful way and a much more effective way to experience healing when living with any form of structural dissociation caused by trauma. So this explains all the different things, PTSD, CPTSD, BPD, otherwise specified dissociative disorders. And then it has a whole part about the specific roadblocks that happen with severe dissociation, which is seen in dissociative identity disorder, where there's even amnesic barriers between parts. So the multi-conscious parts approach is, it's a much more loving way, and it's much more effective. I spent years and years and years digging through my traumas and never experienced any actual healing. Maybe I processed certain pieces of it, but the traumas itself, there was no healing. I'd be fine for a time, and then something would come up and it would be re-triggered like it was happening all over again. And that's because most therapy models, all therapy models that are standardized for trauma treatment, up until now, have been to explore explicit memories, which can be accessed through conscious narrative and stuff. But we now know that trauma-related memories are all implicit memories. They're all in the subconscious. And so no matter how much you talk about it, it's never going to get processed. And it's just going to re-traumatize the client, which I experience again and again and again. So the multi-conscious parts approach, it's much more loving and much more effective. It really opens the door to leading a quality life. I don't see that when you're re-exploring the most painful moments of your life in excruciating detail. That's not a peaceful, gentle way to heal, and it doesn't always lead to healing. So this way is much more foolproof and much less painful, and much more effective. I've experienced more healing in 1 year with this book alone, no therapist, no nothing, just the book and me, 1 year, than I did with dozens and dozens of therapists and psychiatrists and doctors over several years. It's really powerful stuff. And then for the dissociative identity movement, we'll hopefully explain what the multi-conscious parts approach is, because there's a lot of different aspects that go into it, and it still involves rewiring the brain and stuff like that. So it's still hard work, and Janina Fisher explains that the process of using the language of parts as described in this therapy approach is as challenging as learning a foreign language. And so it really does take the brain through some stuff. And that's why it can be more effective. But it's still an investment. It still takes, it still takes hard work, and it still takes time and effort and stuff. But it's something that is much more, I don't even know how to say it. It's almost easier to invest in it because you see the fruits of your labor much quicker than if you're just re-traumatizing yourself. I went through so much traditional trauma therapy, and with how much pain I was experiencing, I was just getting angry with myself all the time. But with this, I've actually seen progress, so I'm more empowered to continue despite how hard it is, if that makes sense. So just a little peek into some of the benefits of Janina Fisher's multi-conscious parts approach described in her 2017 book, Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors, Overcoming Internal Self-Alienation. And stay tuned for the dissociative identity movement that will be launching in just a few months. If you want to get involved with that, you can join our Facebook group, the Dissociative Identity Movement.